Okay, hi. So this is a video, it's a bit different. It's if you've tuned in to watch a video about camping and camper vans and all that kind of stuff, it's not about that. So what I would say is, if you have tuned in thinking that that's what it's about, you can switch off now. On the other hand, if you're interested in a little bit about videography and cameras and lenses and stuff like that I use in my making of the videos that I make, then you've definitely come to the right place. So what's prompted this video is our good friend Jonathan Mills contacted me to say that he enjoyed the last video I put up, so thanks very much, Jonathan. But Jonathan is embarking on doing some videos himself. So what he asked me for was some feedback, and I said what I do is that I put up a video to kind of go through what's in my pack and how I make the video. So because of that, what I would say is that this video is probably going to be somewhat my usual style of me rambling. And I know some people don't like that. So again, if you're kind of not in the mood for listening to me rambling and going on about stuff, because I don't have a script and I just kind of talk off the top of my head a little bit. And as someone very funnily said, why use one word when I can use 10 words to describe something? I mean, that's pretty appropriate for me and fairly apt. So, it's going to be that style of video. But again, so just to say thanks to Jonathan for asking the question. And to be honest, I'm delighted that you've asked me it now, because I do feel a little bit more competent in making the videos, especially over the last little while. I think that I'm kind of making the videos that I want to make, if you know what I mean. So as opposed to, I think I'm kind of finding my own style, and I think I'm starting to get to grips with all that kind of stuff. So anyway, so what I'll do is I'll cut to the chase. Okay, so the setup is going to be, what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk a little bit about how I make the videos, and then what I'll do is I'll go through of all bits of various camera equipment. You can't see it here, but I have bits of cameras equipment here, and that'll explain kind of the story with regards to where I am at this stage now. So let me just see now. So what I'm trying to do here is I'm trying to get myself positioned. So this is the rule of thirds. So what I'm trying to do is, so you can see here the screen is here. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to position myself in this position here, because I can see on the monitor that there's an intersection here, and this is the kind of stuff that you need to know, because you need to know where to position. If I position myself in the center, it can be a bit boring or something like that because I have the space on either side, but by being in this position it's more interesting. Okay, I'm kind of rambling a little bit. Okay, so I've been doing videos for about, I'm going to say 3 or 4 years now, and I only really kind of got serious into doing it in the last couple of years. So we got the van, and then I started to, at the same time, consider doing YouTube videos with regards to the van. Now, what I was doing was, it was a little bit all over the place, in that what I was doing was I was doing videos on product reviews. I was running at the time as well, and I was doing videos about that. And at the time, what I used to use was, before I got the camera that I'm videoing this on, I used to use my iPhone, right? And I had this mic. So this is a small Rode mic. It's designed to fit into the phone, so it basically fits into this position like this. And that's what I used to use for the first year or two anyway. And that did fine. I used to have it on one of these things. It's a holder for it, so the phone would sit on here and I'd run around with it here. I also got one of these larger Joby ones as well, and that was for a larger camera. But these things have all been kind of superseded over time, and then I tend not to really use them anymore. Okay, so I used to use the video. I used to film everything. So all the earlier videos were done on, sorry, I'm just noticing the battery's going to go dead. Anyway, so all the videos used to be done on this camera here, like I was saying, and that was fine. That was perfectly adequate for what I was doing at the time, in that you can do 4K in this. You can do you can kind of use it's iMovie. You can use all those various things on it, which are the things that I used to use. So it's very kind of low tech. I had the phone. it's just by chance it does good videos, and then it obviously came with iMovie, and that did me for a long time, and that was good enough, right? So then slowly but surely then what happened was I started to get a bit more interested in the quality aspects of it, and so I was watching videos on kind of like how other people did, you know, how other people you know, what they used to use for editing software and what they used to use for making their videos, because slowly but surely over time I started to get my ambition started to grow a little bit more with regards to what kind of videos I was making, and I was starting to get frustrated by things with the phone. So sometimes what would happen was it wouldn't record the audio, or sometimes it would just cut out, and then I started to notice then when I was trying to edit the software that the quality of the way the video records, it's called a codec. And the codecs within here, they didn't take a huge amount of editing. They would start, so we were trying to like grade the color and change the colors, you know, you can do that. The footage would start to fall apart. So I started to get a bit of an interest in all that kind of stuff. And then it started to then, I was doing my research with regards to how I would go about improving the look and the feel of the videos that I started to make. Because as I was saying to Jonathan the other day, the thing that's most frustrating about making these kind of videos is in your mind you have how good the video is going to be and the quality aspect of it, but what tends to happen is that you tend to deliver something that you're not happy with, be it the color, the editing, the timing, the music. All the various aspects of it are usually a real problem, and you know, so you go to all the trouble of spending hours filming stuff, you know, you have all the equipment, you sit down and edit the whole thing, and then when it's put together it's rubbish, you know. Now, you know, saying it's rubbish is probably being a bit harsh on myself, but I do look back over the videos and, you know, I am, even recently, I'm critical of them because I'm not an expert. You see, this is the thing that it comes down to, in that I am not an expert at doing this. I'm not trained in any way. Anything I know, I've learned myself, and I've always had an interest in photography. And when I was, you know, in my 20s and I was working, I kind of bought myself a few cameras, a few lenses and bits and pieces and stuff like that, and then I gave it up for a long time. That's just a bit of a kind of background as to you know, how I'm kind of into it. And you know, I think that the thing I'd say to Jonathan and to anyone else watching is that you probably kind of have to find your own style, and I think I'm still kind of working on it, because there's things I try and there's things I do, you know, and I don't like and I do like. And it's a bit of trial and error, and some things that you do are done by accident, and you kind of like those as well, and you kind of incorporate it. And I watch hours and hours and hours of other people's videos on tutorials and all that kind of stuff on how to use the software, all the various things, all the, you know, all the various equipment that you can have. And so I spend a long time doing a lot of research on this, trying to build up my understanding and knowledge of these things. And so that's what's happened slowly but surely over the years. You kind of, you know, you might buy a piece of equipment and all of a sudden then you have to kind of learn how to use it, and then that leads you on to develop, you know, buying something else, because it opens up your abilities to kind of do extra things. But so when I first got, like, when I moved from iMovie, which I had to learn how to use, when I moved from iMovie to Final Cut Pro, you know, I had to learn how to use that. But then as you're watching videos about how to learn how to use Final Cut Pro, you'll find out things about like LUTS and the plugins that you can buy and add in, and all of this just kind of builds and adds to it. Now, there is a guy called Philip Bloom, and he's probably the style of video that I like the most. I like Sam Calder, and I like all the, you know, those kind of fast-paced move. What's his name? The Canadian guy. I can't think of his name right now, but I like him, and you know, I like how expert he is at what he does. I think what he does is really brilliant. But he's a trained, you know, he's a trained videographer. These guys are professionals. But what I do is I look at their style and I kind of go, I think I could try and copy those kind of things. And I think you go through a phase of, you know, given the opportunity with all the bells and whistles, you tend to add in lots of extra things. So you add in all the gimmicks and stuff like that. But what I noticed with Philip Bloom is that his videos, you know, they say that if you notice the edits, if you notice when I cut and jump and all that kind of stuff, then I've done it badly. And that's true. You know, when I watch back the video, I go, oh, that's a bit clunky. But the problem is you tend not to notice them until the video's loaded and up, and a few days later, you've put the video up and you go back and watch it and you kind of go, oh, that's bad. How did I miss that? But that's just the nature of it. But what I've noticed with Philip Bloom is that he relies on beautiful images, very high quality images. He's very high quality cameras. And what he does then is it's all about color and the image and all that kind of stuff, you know. So he's kind of, on some level, he's kind of my mentor. Let me just take a break now. So he's the guy I emulate the most. But again, you know, he was a cameraman for, you know, working with reporters and all that kind of stuff. So he's a huge career. If you watch his videos, you'll see that on some level, you'd probably see why I like his videos. They're beautiful, and they're really, really well made and very interesting. So at the moment, what I'm kind of going through is, so if anyone who watches street photography, I like street photography. So those kind of pictures of people standing in streets and all that kind of stuff, you know. So that's what I like, and so I've discovered that that's really what I really like, and what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to incorporate that look into the videos at the moment. Now that's the kind of style I'm going down the road of. You might not like that at all, and you know, some people like the videos where people talk into the videos. Some people like, you know, instructional videos, so on and so forth. And I mean, when you look at my channel, you know, after all those years of you know, adding videos and doing everything I've done, I'm only up to 1,600 subscribers, which is, you know, very small in the grand scheme of things. But that means then obviously what I'm doing is that I'm creating these kind of niche videos or something. I don't know what it is. But the thing about it is I've kind of come to terms with it over time, and that like the channel is not going to grow hugely like some other channels. But I think what I understand is that that's because I think the videos I do are quite niche, and you have to learn to accept that. I think, you know, over time you have to kind of say, well, that's the kind of channel I have. And certain people, because I get people commenting saying how much they like the videos and stuff like that, so they're like me, and that obviously the style of video I do they appreciate, and so on and so forth. Okay, so what happened then was so just to jump into the kind of technology side of things. Okay, so I was doing the edits on the iPhone, right? So I was videoing everything on the iPhone, and then what I was doing then was editing it in iMovie and then uploading it from iMovie onto YouTube. It was that straightforward. But then as I started to get a bit more adventurous, because you can, iMovie's on, I had a MacBook Air at the time, and it has iMovie as well, and it can do a few more things than what you can do on the iPhone. But then slowly but surely I started to realize, because I was looking at videos online and I was going, how are they doing that? How did he do that? And how did he do this? And then I started to discover that iMovie is basically like a cheap and cheerful version of Final Cut Pro. So now there's loads of various software out there that you can get, and I did try some of the high-end free ones. I do like Final Cut Pro. So Final Cut Pro, you have to buy it, right? So it's €300. So that was the first. And that was one of the first big investments in that I bought Final Cut Pro. The problem with Final Cut Pro is that it's very taxing on the machine, which meant I had to go out and buy a new, and I didn't bring it in, I had to go out and buy a new Mac. Okay, so that's what I did. So you can see where one thing causes a growth in the other, right? So I could have stayed using iMovie, I could have stayed on the original Mac, and I could have saved myself a few €1,000. But you see, the part of me is that what I wanted to do was make better videos, and better videos mean then you need more processing power. So what I would say based on that is that if you are going to have a decent piece of software to edit your videos, you know, you need to buy a decent machine. You know, now you don't have to, but that's what I would say. So that's what I did, because I knew the processing of that I was going to do was going to be very taxing. So what I did was I went out and bought the new MacBook Pro last year. And not only that though, because I was doing, you see, this can record 4K, right? But the camera I'm using there records 4K as well. And the codec in it and so on, and all the various aspects of it may mean that the images that it produces are high quality images, but they're also very taxing on your machine. So that meant then I needed a better machine. So it forced me to go out and buy a MacBook. The MacBook then, using Final Cut Pro. Now I'm not going to do I'm not going to be cutting to kind of B-roll or anything like that on video. I'm not going to do any of that kind of stuff, because it's just too time consuming. with the MacBook Pro, then Final Cut Pro is an excellent piece of software. Okay, so it is very good, and you can get lots of plugins, and so I have gotten plugins for it that kind of give you these kind of cool effects, and also, you know, the various cool transitions. But the main thing I tend to use it for is the LUTs. So they're the lookup tables. They're the things that basically change the color profile of what I record. So they'll turn greens to reds, and they'll make the background look slightly blue, and there's all this orange and teal stuff that I kind of learned over time. The more things you add into the film, right, the video that you've taken, the more things that you add, the more processing they take, and you're back to needing a decent machine. So if you do have aspirations to have very high quality videos, and, you know, with lots of bells and whistles going on in it, you are going to need a machine, because what tends to happen is one of two things. One, it'll take a long time to render. Now, some of the videos I have to leave them rendering overnight, believe it or not. In that, like, I could make a video on Saturday, edit the whole thing on Sunday, and then what I might have to do is leave it till Monday before it will render and export, because they're so demanding. But not only that, then if I spot any kind of mistakes in it or anything like that, or things that I want to change, you're back to the drawing board, and you'll have to make the changes, tweak the video, and then export it again. You know, so it might not have to render the whole thing, but if you make enough changes, it'll be back to rendering the whole thing. So it's quite time consuming, but it's hard enough on the machine. Okay, so look, that's kind of like, you know, that's to try and give you the concept of what's going on in that, like, you know, how I'm going about what I'm going about, hopefully. This video is probably a bit rambling. It's a bit crazy, I suppose. What I have here is I have my camera bag. Okay, so like, this is a recent investment, and this is the thing again. But slowly but surely, what used to happen was I had a backpack. I had a regular backpack, and what I used to do was carry all the equipment and bits and pieces around me, that backpack. But slowly but surely, you start to buy so much stuff that what you end up doing is you need some kind of proper camera bag. Now, I bought this camera bag because it was neat and tidy and nice and compact, but it's just a bit too small. But effectively, I carry in this backpack, right? So that's the back. This is the backpack, right? So there you can see it, right? So I carry this. So when I'm going around videoing and stuff like that, this is usually on my back, and it carries everything. Or else what I might do is if we have the van with us, I might leave it locked in the van, and what I might do then is, you know, just bring the camera around with me, or bring what I need, because if we're coming back and forth to the van, it just saves me having to carry this thing around. Okay, so starting, the first and foremost, what kind of camera do I have, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the camera I have. Okay, so this is a Lumix. I'm just trying to adjust the lighting here. Okay, so just trying to, so this is a Lumix GH5, right? So that's what I have, and then there's a Rode mic on the top, and that thing underneath is part of the gimbal, right? So that's what I'm looking at now when I'm you know, that's me there, right? Wait, okay. So that's the thing there, right? So that's the GH5, right? So that's the GH5 camera. That's a Micro Four Thirds camera from Panasonic, and I have it now. I think I have it a couple of years. I think probably. Okay, so it's not cheap. Okay, so I don't know. Like, there's probably no point in me going on about the price of it. But if you want to find out how much the body is, go and look up how much the camera body costs, right? But what's great about that camera is that it records 4K. It's got a flippy out screen. Because it's a Micro Four Thirds camera. It's smaller than a regular full smaller than a regular full sensor camera, right? So the whole idea is that the form factor is that it's more compact. So it's an absolutely brilliant camera. It does things like vlog. It has all different profiles. There's just countless videos about how good it is on YouTube if you go ahead and watch it, right? So that's what I bought. And then the microphone above it is the Rode Mic Pro or something like that. That's a brilliant microphone. All the sound that you hear recorded. Now the camera itself has its own built-in mic, but you need a good quality mic. Now originally, again, this is the mic I used to use, right? So this is the one that was on the iPhone, and that's what I used to use. Brilliant, great little piece of kit. So this is what I started off with, and then I moved up to that. Huge difference in price, but when I went out and bought the Lumix, I got the Rode mic with it as well, because basically what I wanted was a good camera for good quality images and then good sound, right? Because the thing about it is that people will forgive bad images quicker than they'll forgive bad sound, apparently. I would recommend that you, based on your budget, go out and do a bit of research and buy as good a camera as you want, as you can afford, right? Because, and the reason a GH5 is so good is because it ticks all the boxes that I need to do good videos. Now, they've come out with the S1H Plus, no, the S1H, and the S1H is a full frame version of that camera. It's a bigger camera, better bells and whistles and bits and pieces like that. But it's a bigger camera, it's heavier, the lenses are more expensive and so on. But you know, I've seen some of the footage that people have used, and it is a much nicer image that comes out of it. But what I would say is, you know, I'm probably, because of the form factor, I'm going to stick to this camera here. I'm going to stick to having the smaller body and so on and so forth. Not only that, I've invested in various lenses and so on that fit it. And when you sell, what I've learned recently is when you go to sell a lens secondhand, you'll get you'll get very little for them, right? You get very little. What's in the camera bag? Well, what I'd say is, okay, so I have, let me see where to start. Okay, so you'll need, when you're doing your work, right? So, you know, you see these Joby, these guys here, right? These are those tripods that you can wrap around things. So these are made famous by Casey Neistat, and that's what I used to use. I used to use these all the time, right? But what I found was that, so this is where the arms race comes into. You know, you get this one, that was for the iPhone, and then you get this one for that camera. But then slowly but surely you start to realize that what's letting you down is when you're walking around, you can see, when I'm walking without the gimbal, you'll see the image rocking, right? Now, even though the camera itself is stabilized, the chip in the back of the camera and the lens, basically what it is that they are stabilized, right? So they take any kind of shaking out. So when I'm holding the camera handheld, your hands do these kind of micro shakes things. And what it does is they counteract that and they give you a much steadier image, right? And that's fine. But a lot of the videos that I do are walking, okay? So when you're walking, what you get is you get this kind of motion of walking. So what that led me on to was this guy, right? So that's a Ronin S, so that's the gimbal. So this basically, the camera sits in here, right? So that's what happens, the camera sits in this, and then what I do then is I basically walk along holding this, and that's just that's a handle on the back that was recommended to me. Thanks, David. So what happens is that when I walk along with this, what this does is this basically counteracts those up and down movements. Or if I'm panning the camera, what it does is it gives you a much smoother image, right? So you see, what happened then was, because when I got the good camera and I got the good, you know, I got the good software and I got the good laptop, you know, so then I started to discover that what was happening was the images are being let down by this kind of up-down movement. And again, see, so this is the thing, very, very frustrating. So I ended up going out and buying this gimbal. Now, the gimbal is expensive, but it is absolutely brilliant. It's very good, and it does a great job, you know, because you can see how smooth the images are with it. Now, it did act up a little bit recently, and I had to send it back to Ronin or to DJI, and what they did was, they said it was fine, and what they did was they recalibrated it for me, apparently. And it has been fine, but what it was doing was, when we were away in Italy, what it was doing was it was drifting, and it was causing me a few headaches, and I didn't know what was going on with it. But it is an essential piece of kit if you want to do really kind of smooth, if you want to do a lot of kind of walking videos, if you want to do a lot of pans and all that kind of stuff, which again are something that, what I used to do was, when I was using the iPhone and this, you'd be kind of like trying to lock your arms and kind of smoothly do things like that. But this thing, you know, you couldn't walk. That's the problem, right? So whereas the Ronin is excellent. I also have a tripod here as well. This was actually bought for me a long time ago, and I still have it. I hardly use it, but it's just handy to have. Okay, so what's in the camera bag? I've been building up bits and pieces, you know, over the years. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to just show you the various essential things. So just to kind of recap, what's important is, I think you need to set yourself some kind of limits with regards to, you know, I would say the equipment facilitates your ambition. Okay, so you can see, so you go from an iPhone to, you know, to the smaller mic, but then slowly but surely your ambition outstrips the equipment, and then you get new equipment. And then what tends to happen then is then you kind of reset you reset where your abilities are, and your abilities then start to climb. So where am I? I'm still learning. The equipment that I have is far better than the abilities I have. So I'll be a long time working on my changes. But the thing about it is, you know, I've invested in them because I see it as a long-term investment, and they'll last me a long time, hopefully, and that they don't break or anything like that. But obviously that's very expensive. It's a very expensive hobby. And when you consider, you know, 1,000 views on YouTube gets me €1. So, and most of the videos I put up these days are only getting 200, 300 views. You know, it's rare these days that we get, because again, they're so niche. But, you know, I see people putting up videos and they get 100,000 views. If you get 100,000 views, that's €100. So, you know, that goes a long way towards paying for your costs, because one of the costs I have behind the scenes is paying for music. Okay, so music is very important in the editing process. So the way it works for me is I go out with a concept in my mind of, I have an idea in my mind, kind of, I know where we're going to go, right? So we're going to go to somewhere. And what I do then is basically I try and video footage in a certain way that I think is going to capture the view of what it is that I've done. You know, it captures the feel and the look and the feel of the place, but also kind of matches the style that I have. But then what I do then is I sit down and I import all the footage into, you know, into the Mac. Now, what I have is, so this is something, right? Because the files are huge. So what I have is I have these separate hard drives, right? So I have 3 of these, and 2 of them, I think this is 500 gig, and the other 2 are 2 terabytes. That's 2 terabytes. That's 2,000 gigabytes there, and I have 2 of them. So what I do is I import all the footage into the camera, not into the camera, into the Mac. And then what I do is I make a copy, I bring everything in, and then then what I do then is I also bring it into the onto these drives. And then what happens then is I have the Mac, and the Mac is talking to the drive. And what I do is I edit the video that's been edited in the software is on the drive, right? So the software is in the Mac, but the software looks to the hard drive, because when you're editing, the file that for the video can end up maybe, you know, it could end up being 10 gig, but I've seen them go up to much bigger. They can be a huge thing. They can be a huge file. And then also then by the time you're bringing in, all the footage that you're bringing in can be massive as well. You're talking, you know, a huge amount of space. And what tends to happen is that if you keep that on your machine, it slows it down. So what I do is I offload them onto the hard drive, the spare hard drive, and I do the editing there. And what that does then is it takes the pressure off the Mac, because the Mac's memory isn't taken up with trying to hold all this information. What it's doing is it's using this external drive. So what I do then is you would need separate hard drives. Okay, I can't remember what my point was, but I was going somewhere with that anyway. So that's what you would need. So you bring so what it is then is I sit down, I have the footage, and I bring it all into Final Cut Pro, and then what I do then is I go on to Epidemic Sounds, right? So I have to pay for Epidemic Sounds. It's about €13 a month or something like that. And what I do is I kind of go looking for the kind of music that I like, right? Now I can tell a lot of people like the videos in that what they do is they like the combination of the images and the music. So that's important. Sometimes I get that wrong, and people, I tend to get thumbs downs or something like that because people go, they didn't like the music. The mistake I used to make years ago with the music was that I used to have it too loud on the thing, and that's part of the reason I got the new software, is because Final Cut Pro gives you more information about what you're doing, whereas in the past when you're with iMovie, it's very easy to get that wrong, because you don't have that kind of information. You don't have all the gauges and so on telling you what's going on. So what I do is this kind of combination of I bring in the footage, I bring in the music, and so I go looking for the music and I import the music in the same way that you import all the images. And then what I try and do is, on some level, you listen to the music in Epidemic Sounds. And what I'm doing is I'm listening, and that's really nice. And I think in my mind, I'm thinking that will match the footage or what I'm trying to portray. And then what I do then is I bring in that, and then you basically put the footage into the So if you've seen any of these kind of processing softwares, you'll see the footage will be all stretched out, right? And you'll be able to see it. And then what you're able to do is you're able to put the music in underneath, and then you play the two of them, and then you listen to what's going on. And then you have to cut and edit to the music, or not, right? You don't have to do that if you don't want to. But what happens is that I edit the video to the music, but the music is sort of influenced by the video and kind of the place you wear as well. So that's where the artistic part of it comes in, and that one kind of feeds into the other. So that kind of comes over time, and it affects how you edit, it affects the look, the color, it affects a lot of those kind of things. And lately I've been kind of taking the videos is this kind of somewhat voyeuristic. You see, a lot of the videos in the early days were me talking into the camera and us talking about bits and pieces inside it. But I think on some levels, I think what's kind of interesting is that if you come along in a kind of a voyeuristic capacity, in that we're not really addressing you, but you're kind of sort of seeing us in a natural state. It's not like you do and you don't, because Christian sometimes he's aware that the camera's recording and he acts up a little bit to it and he kind of ruins the idea, but it's kind of cute in a way, and it's just sort of fun. But that's what I'm trying to do. What I'm trying to do is basically, bring you with us, but not in a kind of, so we're here now and this and the other stuff. It's sort of like it unfolds for you. And I think that's the thing, and then it kind of works well, and I just like it. I think that's the thing. I just kind of like what it is at the moment and what I'm doing, and they are kind of evolving. But then there'll be still kind of videos, I think, where we'll talk into camera and all that kind of stuff. All that, probably, I don't know. What's in the camera bag? Okay, where to start? Okay, so I've covered off the drives. Okay, so you need external hard drives. This is a little case, and in this little case is cleaning equipment, right? Cleaning equipment for your lenses and so on, right? So you'll need something like that. Now I'm not doing this in any particular order. And then what I have is the drone, right? So that's the Mavic Pro, right? So I have that a few years now. I think it must be nearly 3 years now, right? So the drone was one of these things where I didn't obviously have a drone, and I saw people using drones, and it's a bit of a gimmick and a toy. And what I did was then I went out and bought it, and it's brilliant. It really enhances, because what it does is it gives you this view, this up high view and so on, and it just enhances it. So would I say get a drone? Absolutely. Is it hard to fly and use? Yes, it is. And in the early days I've had some real near misses, and I've had some nightmare scenarios that I can think of. It takes a lot of practice, but the only thing I'd say over time is that when I used to send it up at first, I used to send it up for a lot longer, but now I'm able to get what I want much quicker. I know what I'm doing. I kind of, when you're flying it back and forth, you kind of know the images that you're kind of looking for, and what you do then is you get very good at, you very quickly, I have 3 spare batteries. I have 2 spare batteries and the battery in it, because, I used to fly it so much, but what tends to happen is I get most in 1 or 2 batteries, right? So, but the thing about it is the image files are massive, and again, that's part of the reason you need these external hard drives, and part of the reason you need a good computer, because processing those images is hard going. That's why when I was editing originally on my original Mac, what was happening was that it was crashing. Okay, so it was crashing all the time. So that forced me to go out and buy a new computer. But then this is the case of my ambition was such that my ambition was getting higher and higher, and what was happening was that the computer wasn't able to keep up with me. Okay, this is just another bag of bits and pieces like that. There's nothing essential in there. That's just the drone controller. What else do we have? Spare bits and pieces for the drone, spare propellers, and then there's just various accessories for plugging it in and so forth. So nothing too essential there, right? And then there's just like spare batteries and so on, right? So that's the thing. So the actual camera equipment itself, that is what I have. Okay, so on that camera there now at the moment is a 15mm prime lens from Panasonic. Okay, it's a Leica 15mm Sumilux prime lens, blah blah blah, right? So what that image is for? That image is it's not widescreen, okay, so it's not widescreen, but what it does is it allows me to play with the background, right? So the background will be behind me. You can open the aperture quite wide. I think it's 1.8 or something like that. I'm not sure what I have it set to now at the moment. Let me just see. And you see it's getting brighter there now. But anyway, so you can play around. So that lens there which wasn't cheap, but that lens has a specific purpose, and what I tend to use it for is if it's indoors, if I'm trying to blow out the background, and you know, it's also because it's quite a wide aperture, it's good at night, and or we're in the van, or if I need a small, because the lens is only about this deep, right? So that's what you need. So you need that. So that lens was bought based on me watching tutorials and trying to understand how people got certain looks. That's what that lens was bought for. And I bought that lens when I got the camera because I knew in advance that that's what I needed, okay? So I'd done some research. Now, I did have a different lens. The camera came with a lens that I traded in the other day for a separate lens. So I no longer have that lens. It was a more generic kind of standard lens, but I got rid of it, right? So this lens here, this is my Panasonic Lumix. This is my 8-18. Now the difference with this lens is that it is widescreen. So this is the one widescreen, wide angle. So this is when you see all the shots of me outside and so on. This is the lens I use. This is gives you a much wider view of things. So the issue I had originally when we were in New York, when I was away with the camera, that image is quite tight. So if I wanted to capture, say, a vista or a building or something, I was doing a lot of panning. I had to pan up and down a lot and kind of go across, and it wasn't giving me the look I wanted. Whereas this camera here, this lens here, it takes in a much wider and bigger area view, right? And that's what that's good for. So this is excellent. So I bought this when we were in the States. I bought this, but again, I knew from doing my research that this is I needed this 8-18. Wide angle lens, right? So that's it, and this is my kind of workhorse. This is the guy that does the most of the work. The reason it's black here on the front is because what I have on it is a variable ND filter, right? So you'll need one. You'll need a variable ND filter. What did I do with the one I bought the other day? I don't know. So what the variable ND filter does basically is that it acts like a sunglass. And then what I do is I rotate it. Now again, this is kind of complicated stuff. You want the aperture on the camera to be open as wide as possible because it gives you the filmic look, right? So that kind of slightly blurred out background. That's what you're trying to achieve. But you see, the thing is, by having the aperture wide open means that you have to have a higher frame rate, which means when you get a higher frame rate, you lose motion blur. And the motion blur is what you want because, again, it makes it look more filmic. And so part of the thing I'm trying to achieve in my images is a certain filmic look. So you're constantly trying to balance these things off each other. So by having this, what this means is I can have the aperture wide open. And in the same way, if your eye was wide open on a sunny day and I put sunglasses on you, it cuts down the light. So this basically, but when you'll often see in the videos, you might see my finger rotating it and you'll see the image getting darker and brighter, right? That's because what I'm doing is I'm rotating this. Now, I could leave that out and you might not see it, but it doesn't matter, right? It's just part of the image. So what you do is I basically rotate this, and what it does then is as it rotates, it darkens the image, and then it gets really, really dark, and then it lightens up again, right? So that's what I do. So that's I would say that's an essential. I have one for that lens that's on there, and I have one for this one, and I have a new lens, and I bought one for it as well, because they are absolutely essential. Because again, it helps you when you're trying to achieve that look, that filmic look. So this gives me my wide angle, and that allows me to put the bars on the top to make the whole thing look very cinematic. So ND filter, wide angle lens, that's what you want. The aperture is, I'm not sure what the aperture is, but it's not great in low light. That's the only thing I'd say. It's not great in low light. I can't remember what the aperture is, but that's why I tend to resort to this one in low light, because if you're in low light, you're not really looking for a very wide angle view, really. So that lens will do there. And when I'm out in good light and so on, this is the one that's constantly on the camera. Now, what I learned was when I went away to Germany this year, the zoom on this is not great, right? It zooms, right? So there's an internal zoom in it, but the magnification isn't great. So if you might remember, if you watched the video, this is gonna go dead. Sorry, now the battery went dead, and so that's one of the things I forgot. So another tip: have two batteries, and always make sure one is charged. And I forgot to charge both of them, so that's this one now. Excuse me, is half charged. Okay, so what happened was when I was away in Germany, I couldn't zoom in. So there's birds in the tree, and what I was trying to do is I was trying to zoom in. I was trying to get a close shot of the birds, but you can't really zoom in on this. Now what I could do is, because I record in 4K, what I could do is zoom in as close as I could and then crop in the image. So that's the benefit of recording in 4K, because what it allows you to do is it allows you to crop in, because if you record in 1080p, the quality of a 4K is, I think it's 4 times the image. So you can crop in without losing. You know the way when you crop in too much, you start to see pixels and all that kind of stuff. So by cropping in with on a 4K, you're able to get in much closer. But the thing about it is that it's just it wasn't good enough, right? So it'd been kind of bugging me all summer. And not only that, then when we were coming back on the boat and I wanted to take kind of images of people and so on, you weren't really able to kind of zoom in, and then people can kind of, they cop what you're doing, and they kind of like, they get uncomfortable, and so you don't have that kind of reach. You know, I that's the one thing that was missing from my armory, in that I don't have the reach to kind of stand back and zoom in and video people. So what I did was, the other day I went out and bought this bad boy. I traded in the other lens against it, and I didn't get a huge amount for it. But this is what this is, a zoom lens, right? So let me see, is it unlocked? So this is a zoom lens, right? So this is a 1 to 400mm zoom lens. So what this allows me to do is that allows me to really, really zoom in and get those kind of, you know, kind of zoomed in images. Now there's a couple of things going on. It allows me to zoom in, which is brilliant. So I could have been, you know, very close to those birds in the tree and close to people and everything like that. But the downside is the field of view is quite narrow, and so you get a very tight image. But what it does is that I was watching Philip Bloom. When you zoom in to say 400mm or 200mm in these kind of cameras, right? Now there's a whole, this is a micro four thirds camera, so you have to kind of, there's this thing that when you zoom in using lenses, there's the mils it zooms in by, and you know, there's a doubling factor because of the lens. It's all very technical. You better just go off and look it up yourself. But what he was saying is that at 400mm, when you've zoomed in, it has this compression effect. And I really like that look. So you'll see in his videos, he'll have someone standing on a beach and they'll be looking at the sea, but it looks like the waves are here on top of them, right? The way he takes the image. And that's because these lenses compress. Now I haven't made any videos with it yet. I've just gotten it, so I'm looking forward to actually using this, because what it's going to do is it's going to allow me to take photographs of people without being too intrusive. But it's also going to allow me to video people, and it's also give me some nice compression, you know, of the images, which is something I kind of looking to add to the images, right? So that's the thing. So then I had this light that you saw me using earlier, and there's other small bits and pieces and so on. So memory cards are important because you want fast memory cards, because the camera records. See, this is the thing as well. The memory cards I had in the past are fine, but the memory cards now, the memory cards I have now are such that they need to, you need faster memory cards, because the codec that I use on the camera is quite high, so on and so forth, right? So look, I know this video has been a bit kind of rambling and a bit all over the place, but the point I'm making is that it all started off with me making simple videos, and slowly but surely the whole thing has escalated. And what the thing I'm saying is that even with all this equipment that I bought and so on, I would still say my videos are only okay. As far as I'm concerned, because I'd rather them be better. I'd rather them to be, you know, I just know they can be better. And that's the thing I'm saying, is that, you know, sometimes when I do them, I'm disappointed and hasn't worked out as well, but I still upload and I still put them up because they're worth watching. But also I think, you know, it's practice, that if I don't practice and put them up and then have people kind of feedback to say why they like them and what they like about them, then that helps me kind of hone in on, you know, so when people come back and they say they like the video and stuff, I think that's great. Even when people say they don't like them, well, no one really says they don't like them. You just get thumbs down. And if someone said to me, look, I don't like that because of this, that and the other, it'd be useful information. But really what I would say is, if they liked one video and didn't like another one, they could say to me why they didn't. But if they find that they just don't like any of the videos, then I'm assuming they're just going to unsubscribe. So the people who stay watching them stay watching them. So look, I know, like, this has been a long video, and so, but what I would say is hopefully it has. There's just so much. There's years and years and years of kind of working on these things here, and I'm still an absolute total outside amateur here. You know, in what I'm doing. You know, I'd love to be better, and my ambition sort of outstrips my reach. Is that what it is? But you know, I do really, really enjoy doing it, and I do love doing them. And the benefit is that I get to capture all our trips and our holidays and so on, and that's brilliant. So I can't think of anything else. I'm sure there's things I've left out with all my rambling and going on. But what I would say is, you know, if you are doing videos, the key thing for me is that, you see, the dream of the video that I want to do, the style and the type that I'm trying to achieve, is dictated by the equipment. This is the thing. So, you know, if you want just basic, ordinary, simple videos, then stick to basic equipment. Now you can do some creative stuff and like that. I'm not saying that, but the problem is, as you kind of see, as you kind of recognize the things that other people who are doing brilliant videos, then you realize that they're using these brilliant cameras and they're using all this brilliant equipment. And what tends to happen is then that you tend to step up and buy the gear. Now, what I would say is there is a limit. Like, I don't think I'd replace that camera, not soon anyway, because obviously now I have all these lenses and so on to go with it, and it's brilliant as it is. So if I won the lottery in the morning, would I go out and buy a whole new range of cameras and all that kind of stuff? Yeah, I probably would. Yeah, if I had unlimited money, but I won't. And the whole idea is that the form factor suits what I'm doing. But I it's sort of like when I'm walking along and when I didn't have the gimbal, when we were in Bray and I didn't have the gimbal, it changed. I was doing a lot of static videoing because I knew I couldn't walk. I couldn't walk without the thing, because it gave you this kind of rocking thing. So you see, so that's the point. So all this equipment is great, but I think then you need to have an image in your mind of the video that you're, or the image in your mind of the video that you're trying to deliver, and then you have to have an understanding of, you know, the different apertures and what the ND filter does and what the software is capable of and all that kind of stuff. So that's, I suppose, to answer Jonathan's question, if you're still here, Jonathan, is that when you ask me for some tips and hints and stuff like that, the thing I'm kind of saying is that, you know, where do you start? You know, where do you start? The thing I'd say is ask questions, all right, but, you know, probably watch tutorials and videos. And if you see something in a video that I've done, you say to me, how did you do that? And then I'll be able to tell you, I'll be able to talk you through it and stuff like that. But I'm still, honestly, when I'm doing those videos, I am still myself very much figuring it out as I go along. And the last video, you can see it had very few kind of fancy things in it. And the reason being is because I'm starting to get to a more pure look of the video, that I don't want those kind of arty-farty bits and pieces and all that kind of stuff, that I'm trying to keep it simple and pure. Not deliberately, it's just the way I'm kind of evolving. Okay, this video is way too long. So look, if you have any questions, hopefully this was helpful. If you have any questions, you know, fire away. And what I might do is, instead of having this kind of super duper broad video like I am now, which, you know, is just way too long, what I might be able to do is give some kind of specific answer. So you might say, take me through the lens, or take me through the software, or something like that as well. And maybe what I do is be able to put something together. Now, I'm not a fan of doing those kind of videos. I'm just not a fan of them. I'd rather, at this stage now in my career, I'd rather be out making videos about stuff than kind of doing these instructional ones. But for you, I'm prepared to do it. Maybe. Right, okay, I'll see you. Thanks, bye.